Erlasdottir asks, I've really enjoyed your stories about scavenging art supplies, partly because they're fun and also because I think that too many people believe they don't have enough money to make things, and I want that to change. Some of the coolest stuff I've seen is made from garbage picked up on the beach, stuff from recycling bins. Do you have a favorite trash art found object upcycled? Art makers. Oh, art makers, I see. Well, you know, I think of the upcycled trash art as the crowned king of that is Burning Man, right? Like, in situ resource utilization is Burning Man to a T. I had originally read your question as a favorite upcycled project, and I did want to mention that my old producer, Dennis Kwan at Mythbusters, worked for a time at Kitty Hawk, makers of flying cars, and would sometimes lay materials that they were getting rid of on me. And at one point he called me up and he was like, listen, I've got some motors I'd like to bring by. And I said, absolutely, I'd love some motors. And he said, and at the same time, I've got a bunch of aluminum. I'm assuming you want some aluminum? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And what he brought me was 2 6-foot pieces of aluminum C-channel. This is aluminum C-channel, and it's called C-channel because, yeah, it draws the letter C. And I had these 2 6-foot pieces of this stuff sitting around this cave for a decade. Yeah, easily a decade, trying to think, what could I make with these? What could I make with this? And then just a few months ago, we did a video about it. So many of you probably know what I'm already going to refer to. I made, this beautiful thing. Dude, the book press of my dreams. Is it reasonably in frame? Okay, good. I scavenged the lead screw from one of the extra parts from my bench vices for the main drive. I made most of these cuts on my table saw. This is all made from chunks of just this aluminum C-channel. This is without a doubt the pinnacle of my upcycling life. And I still have not yet made a book that I've pressed in here, which is ridiculous, and I need to do that soon. There is, so I do have a favorite found art maker, and his name was Joseph Campbell. Sorry, Joseph Campbell? Wait a second. Hold on just a second. I am getting my names wrong. I have a great narrative question about the Star Wars universe. Seth Huckstead says, I have a prop narrative question about Star Wars. Why is the cleanliness of the prison on Narkana 5 so terrifying in Andor versus the regular grime of the rest of the universe? That's a great question. You're right. Sorry, Joseph Cornell. There we go. See that? Answer another question. Let your brain relax. Seth, I'm going to pause your question here. Joseph Cornell, a artist from the mid-century. If I remember correctly, Cornell started to make small constructions of found objects, partly as a way of pleasing and communicating with a neurodivergent brother. I believe he was autistic, but I'm not positive about that. And Cornell collected ephemera, paper ephemera, bits of cork, rings, little things, the kind of stuff that we all find compelling in the corners of a drawer. And he would assemble them into these little window boxes that were just small constructions. But one of the unique things that Cornell did with these is there would be stuff that hung on rods that every time you moved the art piece from one museum to another, the positions of some of the objects would change because they're just hanging inside this box. And that was sort of part of the point. This was sort of radical for an art piece, that it might change some of the parameters between showings simply because there was like some chains hanging and they hung differently when they got remounted. Cornell, there was a remarkable exhibit of 40 plus Joseph Cornell pieces at the Pace Gallery in New York City in the late 80s, just before I left to move here to San Francisco. And I feel really lucky to have spent a couple of hours in a room with so many Cornell pieces. It is rare that that many get gathered into one location. There's something I've said on the channel before talking about found object art, gathering pieces you find compelling and assembling them into some sort of a narrative. And the thing that I've talked about when I've talked about found object art is how hard it is to find objects that are compelling in and of themselves, but whose personality you can transcend by joining them with some other pieces. It's like the 1 + 1 = 1,000,000, as Tom Sachs likes to say. There's a lot of found object art where it's like an old shoe and a necklace and a watch, and I get it, I see all those things. And then there's people like Cornell who'll take a little cutout of a child and a ring and a cork ball, and you look at these things in orientation and you want to cry because it's so compelling and it's such a peaceful world that Cornell has created through the glass of his window boxes. One of my all-time favorite sculptors. In fact, he is referenced in Count Zero, the second book of William Gibson's Neuromancer trilogy. If you have not read the Neuromancer trilogy, it, along with Snow Crash, effectively established cyberpunk as a genre. And in Count Zero, a semi-intelligent robot ends up alone in a satellite full of debris that it is assembling sculptures out of, and they end up starting to get sold on Earth as sculptures, but no one knows who the sculptor is, and it turns out it's a robot. Sorry for spoiling the end of a 40-year-old novel. But the sculptures are referred to as being like Joseph Cornell sculptures. Cornell stored a lot of his, so he spent a lot of time, like any found object artist, collecting this ephemera. And I'm not sure where he got it, but he stored it in cigar boxes. And there are pictures of his house, which was on, and I love this, on Paradise Parkway, I think in New Jersey. There are pictures of his house with walls of cigar boxes labeled little things like cork balls and stuff like that. And then there's two that I love. One's called Flotsam and one's called Jetsam. Yeah, Cornell's one of the most important influences on my aesthetic brain. 100%. Just love his work. Go look it up. You're welcome. If you get a chance to see one in person, you really should. And if it inspires you to put some stuff together, by all means, please do that right away. I found that I made in the early days a lot of Joseph Cornell impressions. I did the same thing with H.R. Giger's work after I really got into Alien. It's like I had to take their aesthetic and pour it through my hands until I understood what I wanted from it. And I spent a lot of time with Cornell's work being really, really, really moved and trying to find that space that he created in those constructions. Yeah, without a doubt, favorite trash art, found object art. Second place is Robert Rauschenberg. Another giant, and like, you know, I'm going to go over both of those guys and tell you actually above even the two of them is Marcel Duchamp, who's the first, yeah, I think you could probably say Duchamp is arguably the very first found object art artist. He took a toilet and he put it in an art exhibit under the name R. Mutt, M-U-T-T. There is an inside joke about that, but I can't remember what it is. He later exhibited a bottle drying rack as another sculpture, and I think there's an addition. Tom Sachs actually replicated a bottle drying rack in plywood. Duchamp, I love these artists with weird careers. That's why I love Rauschenberg, right? He's like aesthetically unbound and untethered. But Duchamp was something else entirely, like a master chess player who, I've bellyached on this channel about Duchamp before, but just a remarkable mind, a remarkable approach to art. He both respected it in some ways more deeply than anybody, and also thumbed his nose at it more than anybody, both at the same time. And his work encompasses that derision at the same time as the celebration. All of his work exhibits that to me. Yeah, thank you for that question. I hadn't thought so deeply about found object art on that level until then. Thank you. Oh, right. Okay, so let's go back to Seth Huckstead. Why is the cleanliness of the prison on Narkana 5 so terrifying in Andor as compared to the regular grime of the Star Wars universe? I think that it's a really great aesthetic choice, and I'm glad you brought it up because I hadn't thought it through. But if I'm going to hazard a guess, the first thing that occurs to me is that the most interesting thing about the Star Wars universe is that until George Lucas and the model shop team, Lauren Peterson, Steve Gawley, Richard Miller, and those guys started to build the actual ships that populated the Star Wars universe, and they chose this aesthetic, which Lauren Peterson called boilerplate, where everything looked like it had a reason to be there, and it was like a modified engine. The dirtiness of the Star Wars universe, it's the dirt of people, it's the dirt of industry, it's the dirt of repair, and you see personality in that dirt. Like, we see a culture in that dirt, right? The Empire is clean and the rebels are less clean. Yeah. So I think the prison on Narkana 5 being absolutely antiseptic, it's an aesthetic marker that these aren't people, that they're not considered people. They have no ability to personalize. They are in a white room, in a white suit with some orange accents, and that's their, yeah. I think it's the antiseptic quality. Yeah, too clean is intense, man. It's a lovely question. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Link in the description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.